Castro from Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, for the last generation,
I'm
you have a choice.
the Republican candidate for governor.
Have sexual relations.
And I realize that this is something he is
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barbers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
All right. Hey. Happy New Year from the group here at Backfire. Welcome, John Stanberry, Franklin Chansey.
Good morning.
Welcome back to
Morning.
A new year with Backfire. I know that y'all had a good time off. We took a week off last week to kind of get caught up on our New Year resolutions and all these type of things. So,
well, I didn't get to catch up on much. I spent the week standing outside watching guard over John's house while he was out of town, making sure nothing happened there.
I guarantee you the house was armed.
I didn't go up on the porch. I was afraid some kind of device might have gone off in my face or something.
I'd hate to, I always try to make sure there's food in the pit, just in case we're gone longer.
Oh, Lord. Anyway, I hope y'all had a good time off. I saw Franklin out walking his dog with his new wife the other day. He looked just really content, John. I think he's going to be off to a new good year. I think she's liable to calm him, maybe even tame him this year.
Well, now, that doesn't really say a whole lot for Lisa, then, does it?
Lisa agrees with me.
She hasn't calmed him down any.
She doesn't think I need calming down.
Okay. Well, I thought I was talking about you, Franklin. I'm sorry. Franklin's going to be tamed before the year's end, I'm sure.
That's probably
now
a good
tamed.
thing.
That's another word for whipped.
Tamed. Yes. I'm sorry. We've got to watch the words we talk about these days. Now we got to start watching everything we say. Every word is going to be scrutinized. Is that a word I could use?
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think about the word game going on, John?
You mean the PC police?
Yeah.
Well, we've been going down that road.
Public correctness police, is that what you're talking about?
Well, when you get a president that commits perjury in a federal court and excuses it by saying what the definition of is, that sets an example for the rest of the country, and we've been going down that road for years now.
And that analogy relates to political correctness?
Absolutely. What it relates to, Franklin, is this idea that you can play with the words and that the words obscure the actual truth. Political correctness, we don't want to say Islamic terrorism because then we'd have to deal with the fact that Islam promotes terrorism in many ways. So it's easier to manipulate the words in a lawyerly fashion, just like Hillary and we've got another classified document that now was labeled as classified at the time she saw it originally and sent it through her servers, but she's still putting out these little lawyerly explanations for how she didn't actually break the law.
Well, there's, in true bipartisan fashion, the Republican head of the Federal Bureau of Investigations will make that determination, John.
Except that the president has already come out and said that she didn't commit any crimes. So his ultimate boss has said she didn't commit a crime. But I'm sure you wouldn't find
the Justice Department doesn't need the president's approval to do anything.
So you're not concerned with the president publicly stating a conclusion to an open, ongoing FBI investigation? That doesn't worry you that it would, even in just the public's eye?
Again, as I said before, this appears to be an issue without any there.
Actually, that's not true, Franklin. She's violated the law, we know now. The classified documents were transmitted through her server, and that is an actual violation of federal law.
We'll see about that, John.
Well, you know what? Again, actually, that's perfect. For your topic.
It's the same.
What you're saying is the fact that she didn't get charged by a partisan administration.
I didn't say any such thing, John.
Means she's innocent.
No, I didn't, John. I didn't say any such thing. What I've said is, as I've pointed out before, is that when you come down on the farthest, most extreme interpretation of anything, it's generally wrong.
Franklin, will you admit that there were classified documents on her server?
I admit that one agency has said that some of the emails, in their opinion, were classified. The ultimate conclusion on that has not yet been determined, which is what I said previously. What did she say? She said there weren't any.
At all? Mm-hmm. Did she make any kind of stipulation about this agency or that agency?
As I just said,
or did she make a blanket
process
statement?
Is underway.
Was her blanket
and we
statement
will see
right
what,
or wrong?
Well, we don't know yet. That's
Franklin,
the point.
See, that's the difference between a citizen and a lawyer. Everybody out there in the public knows that if it's classified by one agency, it's classified. And by the way, Franklin, I read the statute to you a few weeks ago. It doesn't have to be marked classified. She's actually responsible for knowing whether it is or isn't.
John,
she doesn't really know much.
As I've pointed out, other agencies in the government had different interpretations of
All right,
those.
do you want me to read the agreement that she signed in 2009?
No, John, because you've read it before and you're not listening.
Classified information is marked or unmarked classified information.
You're not listening.
She agreed to protect
You aren't listening. Nobody has said you're wrong. I just said you don't know yet. And as is typically
Franklin,
the case, you're going off half-cocked.
No, there's over 1,000 emails already that were, some actually were marked at the time she sent them. And all you did was, she first said there weren't any. Then she said, oh, well, there weren't any by my group. Then when they point out Hillary, you signed an agreement where you agreed to protect it whether it was marked or not marked. She just disregarded that.
Again, John, you don't know this yet.
Actually, we do, Franklin.
No, you don't.
All right,
there is a process in the government for resolving disputes between government agencies on classification, and that process is not complete.
Franklin, who did the president put in charge of the Department of Justice investigation into the IRS scandal?
I'm sorry. What?
He put a political donor, active partisan politician in charge of that investigation.
The Department of Justice.
Yes, he did. The person in charge of that was an active political donor and a partisan. And guess what came out of that investigation? No indictments. Now, we know people were targeted. We know multiple people pled the fifth to keep from incriminating themselves, and yet no indictment came out of that.
If the Department of Justice conducted the investigation, the person designated was not named by the president. Nope, just a fact.
So your excuse here is that he's not.
No, this president appointed a very well-regarded Republican as the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Yes, and he will come out with
a shield.
Right. No, I didn't say that at all.
Okay.
Will he determine whether indictments are passed down or will the Justice Department? He won't do that. He'll do the investigation. He'll present the evidence, but then someone in the Justice Department.
The FBI can conduct its own investigation.
But it doesn't indict people, does it?
That's true, John, but they haven't come out and said they've made a recommendation for that either.
There were recommendations in the IRS probe, and the Justice Department chose not to indict.
Recommendations from who, John?
From the investigators, from the IG investigators.
As I said, John,
or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans?
The point is, no one was indicted, Franklin.
That's correct.
Laws were broken, people were abused, citizens were abused, and no one was indicted. This is the most corrupt. You watch, mark my words, in history, this administration will go down as twofold: the most inept and the most corrupt.
There's going to be people who go to prison over this.
Want to bet?
Well, not right now. But they will eventually.
They want to bet?
I think somebody's going to go to prison out of this whole stir pot they've stirred up. Play that little soundbite for me.
Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
What difference does it make?
We were misled that they were supposed to.
Well, Franklin, based on that little quote, so are you in agreement with Hillary that the 4 family members of the slain victims in Benghazi are openly lying? Because that was her assertion this week.
No, John.
Are they lying?
Somebody's lying. It wasn't her, she said.
That you're
well, I'll
talking
give
about.
it to you. She was asked point blank. There was she said in George Stephanopoulos' interview that she didn't tell the families the attack was a demonstration about a film. Now, this is a direct quote from the press. This is on tape. Feel free to look it up. This is the reporter. Somebody is lying, said McLaughlin. Who is it? Clinton replied, not me. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
Well, Franklin, the stories are diametrically opposed.
Okay.
They say she said it. One of them even entered it in a journal at the time. At the time it happened, it was entered into a journal. She says she didn't say it. They ask who's lying because someone's lying, and she says she's not lying. So that's effectively calling the 4 family members liars. Are you in agreement with her that these 4 family members of deceased American heroes are lying?
I'm going to traffic in what I can say with certainty. Number 1, I wasn't present for the conversation, so no, I can't comment on that. Number 2, I know what all of her public statements have been. And all of her public statements, none of her public statements
said... You mean the public statement at that very event where she referenced the video?
She didn't say in that attack was caused by that video. That is not what she said. In that event, that's correct. That's correct.
Once again, folks, the lawyer's back in the room.
No, it's exactly the same thing her public statements have been.
Why would the family members make that up?
I didn't say they made it up.
Well,
I said I wasn't there. I don't know what was said any more than you do. And in typical position, which is you don't care, you'll just fill in the blank.
I'm telling you, the family members have said one thing, she said another. Are you saying it's inconsequential to determine where the truth lies?
No, I'm not, John.
Well, then who would you believe?
I just said, I don't know those people. Do you?
Oh, so
I don't know her.
You're right. So let's examine it then. What motivation would they have for lying? What would they gain from lying?
Well, if I were a cynical person, and I'm not, but if I were a cynical person, one could point out the big, huge movie deal that's been done about the Benghazi
What would
thing.
she gain from lying?
I don't know.
The office of president?
I don't think that Benghazi's going to have one iota of impact on the presidential election.
So you think those 4 family members have more reason to lie?
I didn't say any such thing, John. You're the one who keeps bringing this up.
I'm just pointing
what I
out
said is, listen to me. Listen to me again. I don't know.
Well, let me
so
ask
why are you
question.
asking me to offer an opinion about something I don't know?
I'm sorry, Franklin. That's what this show is. It's opinion.
The problem.
I thought that's what we did on this show.
Typically, we offer opinions about things we know something about.
I don't think you ever offer opinions about something you know about.
What about the soldiers there? Were they asked to stand down? Let me just ask you that.
Oh, they're lying too, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're lying also, I think.
Because they all say they were, and she says they weren't.
First of all, what they were told to do was they couldn't go off on their own till they got some support. So and their commander on the ground was trying to get the local authorities involved because he didn't want his 4 soldiers to get killed also.
Well, one, they weren't
That's
soldiers.
not a stand-down order.
Actually, they're not soldiers. They're private contractors.
Whatever, John.
But frankly, the point is they weren't under the chain of command. They could go if they wanted to go.
Well, why didn't they go then?
They did finally go.
Okay.
They did violate his order and go for 30 minutes. Of course, you all deny that he gave the order.
It's not a stand-down order to say we're trying to get you some support and help in doing this.
So it doesn't bother you that while that discussion, let's say, was going on, the radio was blaring with people going, "If you don't come save us, we're going to die."
Of course, that bothers me, John.
So
that doesn't mean they're on the ground in the midst of all of it. It was a bad decision.
Actually, they saved people's lives, and all of them say now.
Good for them.
All of them say, had they been allowed to go when they first wanted to go, they think the ambassador would have been alive.
That's wonderful if they think that, and maybe they're right. Maybe they're not. We don't know that.
But
they may be alive because of that. And that was somebody else's decision to make who was there, and you weren't.
Actually, you all won't agree to what decision was ever made.
No. I've just asked you to tell the truth.
We are telling the truth,
No,
Franklin.
you haven't.
Look,
the truth is the commander there who was in charge of them told them, don't go. I'm trying to get some support.
Is that a stand-down order?
No, it's not.
See, there you go. The lawyer's back in here. They didn't officially say stand down, so it's not a stand down order. They just said don't go.
No, he didn't say put your guns up. We're not going to go.
Well, I'll tell you what,
he
folks,
said we're trying to get this coordinated to do it right.
That's not
a stand-down order.
If you're ever in, let's say, a bank robbery,
unless you're
and the bank robber's
lost,
threatening to shoot you, and the police chief tells the police, don't go in right now, even though the guy said in the next 2 minutes you're going to be shot, that's not a stand-down order. Yeah. Franklin, people were dying.
John,
and you had men on the ground ready to go, and they issued don't go.
So let's just take it to the logical conclusion then. So you'd say every soldier out there should run his own operation, his own opinion, no matter what his commander says.
Franklin, where was Hillary during all this? Where was Hillary during all this?
During parts of it, she was home. During parts of it, she was at a fundraiser.
What part was she home?
What are you talking about?
What part was she
home? The thing went on for 8 or 10 hours.
Right, and guess where she was? She was at home in bed asleep. Her last correspondence was about 10:15 that night. She didn't correspond with anyone, until I think after 7 o'clock the next morning, at which point the whole thing was over. So the Secretary of State, who's asking to be the President of the United States, went home and went to bed while people burned and died.
At which point 7 different congressional committees concluded there was no problem. 7 times.
Burned and died while she slept.
I have something to ask you guys.
And it sounds so sweet the way you were doing it there.
I really would like to do this. I think this would be something that would be good conversation piece for us, maybe at our next show or the show after. I'll buy the tickets, but all 3 of us go watch this new movie about Benghazi, and then we'll talk about it.
Sure.
Would you like?
Be glad to.
Would you like to go, Franklin? Just go with us and watch the movie.
Only if John's buying the popcorn.
Oh, by the way, you know what the rumor is?
So he's not going to take that out.
I'll buy the popcorn. You know what the rumor in Hollywood is about
it's pretty expensive,
the director? It's a really ugly rumor.
What?
He might be a Republican.
About now, who's the Republican?
The director, Michael Bay. He's now being slandered because he shouldn't have made this movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I think the movie's probably going to tell a lot. The 3 guys that were actually there, you know,
they all tell the same story, which is an opposite story from Hillary's, but I'm sure they're lying too, just like the slain family members.
Right. You know,
it's amazing how all of these people have gotten together and decided to lie about Hillary. Now, none of them have much to gain from it. Hillary has a ton to gain from her lies.
Are you saying those people were interacting with the Secretary of State that night?
No, I'm telling you that they're all telling an opposite story, and either she's lying or they're lying. So now you have a second group of people, the soldiers on the ground, who are apparently lying, according to you and Hillary.
I didn't say they were lying.
Well, someone's
Neither
lying,
did
Franklin.
she.
If one person says right and one person says left, one of them's wrong.
No, John.
Oh, so they can both be right.
Well, in your case, John, for purely political reasons and no other reason, certainly not over any true outrage over what happened to those personnel on the ground.
Well, you're absolutely wrong, but
well,
no,
it is right because I've watched it from day one.
So I'm not bothered by the death of American servicemen. Is that what you're saying now?
I thought
if I don't defend Hillary,
they're
former servicemen, but at the time they weren't under the control of the services because they worked for the CIA, Franklin.
What I'm saying, John, and I will repeat it, and I don't mind saying it, is yes, the Republican Party is far more interested in getting Hillary.
So this president and this Secretary of State have literally burned the world to the ground. And you, who was so indignant about President Bush and his actions, are now saying that if we criticize them, somehow we're the bad guy.
I didn't say that.
The world is burning at our feet as we speak. Saudi Arabia is getting ready to go to war with Iran because of this president's horrible foreign policy that was championed by this Secretary of State, and you're still blaming the Republicans.
In fact, John, what I said, unlike you, is that there ought to be an investigation about Benghazi, but it ought to be focused on the true issue, not these goofy political ones you get lost in.
There's only a couple of people that were in the room at the time.
And by the way, that was a good example of what I've been saying a moment ago, what you just said. Saudi Arabia is getting ready to go to a war with Iran. I will bet you $100 right now that doesn't happen.
Franklin, the point
is... Want to bet? No,
it's
not.
Tensions higher or lower over there.
The point is, and it has nothing to do with
us. The New York
us.
Times is even saying that the region is about to explode.
It has nothing to do with us.
My gosh, this guy is the most incompetent president we've ever had, and you will not...
Barack Obama is responsible for a 3,000-year-old conflict.
No, he's responsible for allowing the entire region to collapse. For example, let me give you a perfect example.
I think he's responsible for ISIS being the way it is.
Let me give you a perfect example, Franklin. Were you aware that 3 years ago the Obama administration negotiated a nuclear agreement with the United Arab Emirates? our friend, the United Arab Emirates, our good ally in the war on terror. Were you aware of that?
I'm sorry, what now? Say it again.
The Obama administration negotiated a nuclear agreement with the United Arab Emirates.
What kind of nuclear agreement?
It was about their nuclear program in UAE, which, by the way, we have bases in the UAE. They've been our ally for decades now, and they negotiated a nuclear agreement. Guess what the UAE...
What was this agreement, John?
It was a nuclear agreement on
to do what?
On their nuclear program.
They have a nuclear
Yes,
program.
they do have a nuclear program.
All right.
And guess what they asked for?
I don't know.
They asked for the right to enrich uranium. Guess what the Obama administration agreed to?
I don't know.
No right for them to enrich uranium. But then they turn around with Iran, who has been our enemy for decades, with Iran, who is the enemy of the UAE and Saudi Arabia and Egypt and all of the rest of the Middle East that have cooperated with us, and they granted them the right to enrich uranium. That's the kind of horrible diplomacy that this Obama administration has done. And that's why you see the UAE with Bahrain, with Saudi Arabia, with all of the other nations now severing diplomatic ties with Iran. And you can sit there and go, there's no problem over there. They're severing ties, Franklin. They're recalling ambassadors. That's usually a prelude to military action. Now, maybe it won't happen, and I hope it doesn't happen, but it will be squarely on this president's feet.
And so you're saying that the UAE is upset with this agreement that we have?
Absolutely, Franklin. They're all upset. They hate the agreement. They're scared to death of the agreement. On top of the fact
No, John. You're talking about an agreement between the UAE and somebody. That's what you started with. Are you saying they're upset about it?
Yes, Franklin. They asked for the right to enrich uranium. Our friend, our ally, asked for the right to enrich uranium. The Obama administration said no. Now, maybe that was the right decision with our ally, but if it's the right decision to tell our ally and friend they can't enrich uranium, why in the hell would you give our enemy the right to enrich uranium?
We didn't give our enemy the right.
Yes, you did. He did.
They already had it.
No, Franklin. He stated that they were going to...
Are there any facts at all that you're incapable of grasping?
I have gone through this with you over and over again. The president himself stated they were going to dismantle all their uranium enrichment capacity.
Here's the facts. Here is a fact,
Franklin,
and by God, you change.
I hope you keep these recordings, because when the world is burning from a nuclear detonation,
you look me in the eye and tell me if what I'm saying is wrong.
Sure.
In the 8 years before Barack Obama became president,
it's Bush's fault again.
I'm not saying whose fault it is. Just tell me if it's a fact.
What?
Did the Iranian nuclear enrichment capability go up 8,000%?
Absolutely.
All right. Is it smaller now than it was when Barack Obama took office?
We don't know.
Yes, we do.
Actually, no, Franklin.
So don't give me this crap.
First off, you've actually made my point. The Iranians are untrustworthy, and even under an administration...
The same people who told us that it was going up are the ones who told us it was going down.
The United Nations just last month said they couldn't ascertain that. And the secret sites...
John.
Did they ever enter the secret sites?
John.
This president said that we would have to put inspectors on the ground in the Fordal military complex. He then, when Iran said no, they went, okay, you can send your own inspectors in.
It is perfectly legitimate,
Franklin,
for
even
you to
the
oppose
liberals say this is a disaster.
It is perfectly legitimate.
When the New York Times is on the right side of you, you are way off the board.
It is perfectly legitimate for you to oppose this agreement, but you can't make up your facts
on this.
I love that quote. You're
By the way, just
liberal
this
than
week,
the New York
White House.
Got that.
Just this week, the White House. Now, last week when they tested their missiles, the White House actually said we're going to hold them to the agreement and we're going to enforce some new sanctions. That was a statement by this president, Franklin, and his White House. Well, now they have announced, when the Iranians complain, that they are going to delay the plan to impose new financial sanctions on Iran for its ballistic missile program amid growing tensions with Iran over the nuclear deal struck earlier this year.
Do you think Obama's done a good job or media job
on any issue?
On any issue overall.
What? The economy? Stock market tanked this week.
Well, first of all, the stock market's up dramatically from when he took office.
Yeah, because it was at a historic low when he came in. It always goes
how
up.
did that
son.
happen?
By the way, Franklin, our growth has averaged 1.5% to 2%. Historically, we've averaged 4%. He is at less than half the historic growth.
And frankly, it's a remarkable accomplishment in
gosh.
light of the austerity
So, folks,
policies.
the fact that we didn't actually collapse is the reason he's a success.
No.
Now,
Not at all.
by the way,
Not at
folks,
all.
if you're underemployed
Not at
or
all.
unemployed
What I will
still
say
after
is-
8 years,
what I will
thank
say-
Barack Obama.
Well, first of all, I don't know if you noticed or not, you wouldn't care about facts. The Tennessee Department of Labor issued a report about 2 weeks ago that said that wages were dramatically rising in Tennessee because of the fact that the unemployment rate had fallen
Right,
so
because
much.
we have a Republican governor and Republican leadership in the state House and state Senate. And we've made ourselves the number, I think, 2 or 3 best state for business.
Although our
What's Illinois doing under Democratic control?
Unemployment rate
What's
was
the
still higher
unemployment
than
in
the national
Illinois?
average.
What's Illinois doing?
With their
By the way,
Republican
what's
policy.
Illinois doing on crime? They have all of the gun control proposals.
Nice
the president's
segue,
making.
John, from a
What's
failed
Illinois-
policy
Well,
you don't
no,
want to talk about.
It's not a failed
It
policy.
is.
Tennessee Republicans have made a difference in Tennessee. Thank you for pointing that out.
Except that our unemployment rate's still higher than the national average.
Well, frankly-
oh my God! How could that happen with those beautiful Republican
because
policies?
we actually don't distort the national average like the president
Right,
does.
John.
What's the underemployment rate, Franklin?
Well, according to this story, the underemployment rate has fallen dramatically
What
here.
is it at? It's over 10%, Franklin.
Fallen dramatically.
It's over 10%. Folks,
in fact, what they said was that Tennessee employers are having trouble finding workers.
Tennessee, under Tennessee Republican leadership. Thank you for pointing that out again.
Well, Republican leadership is all over the
Democrat
South.
leadership in
And
Illinois.
the unemployment rate all over the South is higher than the national average.
Democrat-
Why is that, John?
Well, Franklin, because
Oh,
this president has a
everybody's
failed
lying
economy.
except
This president has a failed
Everywhere
economy.
else is booming.
And we're all fighting against it.
I want to say something, Franklin. I really do think President Obama has done a good job. He's done a real good job at showing us how screwed up America is.
Now, there is,
That's one of the things that
Now,
flies
I really
all over
think-
me. America's not all screwed up.
Yes, it is. Go to Washington and look around and see what you can get done.
I agree with that. Yesterday was a perfect example.
well, let me
I
ask
agree
you,
with
let
that.
me ask you a question,
When-
Franklin.
what was yesterday?
87% of Republicans think we ought to close the gun show loophole. 87%
What is
of
the gun show?
Republicans.
What is the
What
gun
is
show
that gun
loophole?
show? What is it?
Not,
Explain it to
background
us.
checks not required in private transactions at gun shows.
Who's a private transaction?
And by
Who is a private
many
transaction?
cases by dealers at those gun shows.
Actually, that's not true. And the president actually is either lying or he's an ignoramus to the law because he actually said something that is completely untrue yesterday. You want to hear it?
Let me finish my point. Thank
Oh,
you,
okay.
John.
You don't want to hear it.
87% of Republicans surveyed support that. And you can't even get a vote in
Here's the
Congress.
reason.
So, yeah,
Well,
is
one, he's
Congress
had
broken?
votes.
Absolutely.
Franklin, first off, several of his proposals have had votes, and the Democrats in Congress didn't support it either.
They did.
So why is he
Not
doing
on
it?
that one. 87%, John.
All right,
if
let
you
me ask you a
can't pass
question.
a bill,
No, Franklin.
if you can't
What's
pass
the
a bill
bill?
supported
What's the bill?
to close the gun
What's
show
the gun
loophole,
show loophole?
to expand the
See,
background
Franklin,
checks
that's
and
the
apply
way
that.
that's the way Gallup and that's the way the Democrats do their
John,
polling. When you ask the gun show, should we
vast
close the gun?
majority
Guess
of
what?
NRA members
There
support
is
it.
no, Franklin. None of that crap is true. There is no gun show loophole. There is no. What the gun show loophole supposedly is Joe takes his granddad's shotgun down to the gun show and walks around with it in his arms. Fred sees Joe and says, "Hey, that's a nice looking gun. How much you want for it?" And Joe says, "Well, I want $200 for it." And Fred says, "I'll give you $175." And they meet in the middle at $190. That's the only gun that Joe sells in probably 10 years. That's the gun show loophole.
Yeah, well, here's a quote from a guy named Trent Morrell who works at Shooter's Depot.
Mm-hmm.
You're familiar with that one,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
I am.
He says he thinks it's a good call by the president. Enforcing that requirement may cut down on the number of problematic sales he sees happening at gun shows. You have people walking around with a backpack that has a bunch of guns in it, and they'll sell to whoever they want so long as they get the right price.
Well, first
That's
off,
that's somebody in the gun industry.
guess what,
saying
Franklin? The
that.
guy walking around with the backpack is actually already breaking federal law. And that is a problem. And you know why
That's
you know why that guy at Gun Depot did that? Because it cuts into their business. Now it is illegal and it should be stopped.
Okay.
But
then, John, what I've said all along is,
but frankly,
why don't you support common sense stuff?
Because that's my point. It's already illegal. Guess what? What have federal gun weapons convictions done under Obama?
I don't
under
know the
current
answer.
law.
I don't know the answer.
Well, let me read it to you. Fiscal year 2015 had 6,002 federal weapons convictions. That's a change of down 5.8% from the year before, down 15.5% from 5 years ago, down 34.8% from 10 years ago, and that's when Bush was in office. So the current law, this administration is decreasing the number of prosecutions. Why do we need another law when they're not enforcing the law they have?
Decreasing the number of prosecutions, or is that a reflection of what's happened with the crime rate?
No, frankly, they're decreasing. Actually, the percentage has gone down too. I'll bring that to. I had that a couple of months ago. Joe Biden was actually asked about it, and he said, "Well, we can't really be tasked with enforcing the law."
Let me break up just for a minute. We've got to take a break, but I want to ask a question to both of you. Franklin, would you support, as a gun law, that any person that was caught using a gun in a crime would have 10 years automatically added to their sentence?
Blanket across the board.
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Because I've seen lots of problems where that's problematic.
If they were using the gun in a crime?
When you say a crime, for example, let's look at the lady down in Florida down there whose ex-husband, whoever, was trying to assault her. Okay. He denied that.
Mm-hmm.
She fired a gun into the ceiling of their place, she said, to try and warn him away and to get him to leave her alone. She got charged with a crime and faced 20 years in prison based upon that. Now, is that appropriate? That's a crime. If she was literally trying to not defend herself, if that wasn't it, that's a crime. That's an awfully harsh result.
Do you think we could get around possibly a few loopholes there?
The problem is it's hard to do.
And then
it is hard.
And then if we put something, if the libs and the Democrats would just go along with, if they use a gun for an armed robbery.
Well, we already have much higher penalties for that.
Armed robbery.
And if it's a federal, well, that's not true.
They're prosecuted under state law. Very few of them are prosecuted under federal law. We've gone through this before.
Okay. Well,
Project Exile in Richmond showed that would work.
Under state law, it's a separate offense to commit an armed robbery,
Most of
and
those
it's a higher
are
penalty
actually
for that.
prosecuted, though, under state law. Project
Under
Exile,
state law
right?
has
But
a
what
higher
we're telling
penalty.
you is this administration isn't enforcing the law they have.
That's right. That's right.
By the way, Franklin, do you think
That's
background
not been
checks
my
work?
experience.
Do you think background checks work?
Well, it's sort of a trying to prove a negative.
No, it's not. There's a new study that was released just January 2nd, published by the Crime Prevention Research Center. And they said, despite the frequent calls for expanded background checks after mass public shooting, there is no evidence that the background checks on private transfers of guns would have prevented any of the attacks that have taken place since at least 2000, adding that there is no statistical evidence that proves the mass public shootings are rarer in states with background checks on private transfers. Matter of fact, the White House, in announcing these very things that he announced, admitted that they would not have stopped any of the incidences. Well, then why did he reference the instances?
Because that's the thing that is motivating us to look at the issue.
But Franklin, let me ask you a question. If you go to your doctor and he sits you down and he says, Franklin, I've got some bad news for you. You've got liver cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, well, doctor, what are you going to do about it? He said, well, I've decided we're going to amputate your foot. Are you going to stay with that doctor?
Well, John, there's another way of looking at it.
No, Franklin.
No.
The White House admits that it won't affect any of the cases they cite.
There's another way to look at this.
That doesn't mean that the actions
Well,
can't
you
have
stay
an
with
effect.
that doctor,
That
Franklin.
doesn't-
Good luck with your liver cancer.
That doesn't mean that the actions can't have an effect on future events.
Oh, yeah, you won't have foot cancer down the line.
Well, I don't know
You'll
about your
die from the
goofy
liver
analogy.
cancer.
We have to take a break, I'm sorry, and we'll be talking about liver cancer when we come back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Checking to cash.
The cash you need today is waiting for you at Check Into Cash. It's your money, so come in and get it.
Get a payday advance today for up to $425. At Check Into Cash, we make it quick, easy, and confidential.
The cash you need is right here, so stop worrying and stop in to Check Into Cash today.
Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Did you know that U.S. Money Shops cashes all checks, even the ones most check cashers reject? Tax refund checks, government checks, payroll checks, and many more. And when you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off your next purchase. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail. So stop by one of our 11 locations or visit us online at usmoneyshops.com.
Buy yourself or apply today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some restrictions may apply. See store for details.
Hey Whoopsters, this is Johnny B. Jonesy, and I'm located at the Check Into Cash off Treasury Drive. That's next to the new Walmart, right between Cato's and the Tanning Company. Come visit me if you're in a financial pinch. We offer products all the way up to $425 on our payday advances, $2,500 on our title loans, and $4,000 on our line of credit. That offers the lowest rate guarantee, and we buy out titles anywhere, anytime. And that is 2314 Treasury Drive, Cleveland, Tennessee. And that number, 423-479-2166. New customers, mention Whoop FM and get cash back on your first loan. That's Check Into Cash. Ka-ching!
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
This is Drew at the Bald-Headed Bistro. Come down and get your gift cards for all of your family and friends this holiday season. From now until December 27th, when you buy a $100 gift card, we're going to give you a $25 gift card for free. Come get yours today.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, we don't just sell cars, we buy them. Bring your car, truck, or SUV down to Buy Here, Pay Here USA, and we'll give you a free appraisal with no obligation. We pay top dollar for most cars, so before you trade in your vehicle, come see us for an appraisal. At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, we pay the most for your car. Visit Buy Here, Pay Here USA in Cleveland, Dayton, or Chattanooga, or go to buyheresellhere.com. That's buyheresellhere.com. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Yeah, you looking for something sweet? I know you are. Bring your little sweet self to the Village Bake Shop. Around since 1961, there ain't a baked good in the galaxy the Village Bake Shop can't whip up for you. So when you're ready to treat your mouth to a taste you won't soon forget, get over to the Village Bake Shop in the Village Green Town Center, or give them a call at 476-5179. You dig?
Train Endurance Engineers are an elite group of extremely devoted individuals who stop at nothing to push our heating and cooling units to the brink. That way, when they pick up the pieces, they'll know exactly how to make the Train we install in your home even more reliable. Right now, their target is a Train AC unit.
Test to control. Fire up the pitching machine.
Their methods may seem unconventional.
Okay, cue the jackhammers.
But it's because of their tireless efforts that it's hard to stop a Train.
When you want an unconventionally efficient heating and air unit that keeps your home right in the comfort zone day in and day out, nothing will do but a Trane. To get the best Trane service, call your local Trane Comfort Specialist. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. Keeping you comfortable is Mechanical Systems' only business, and they've been providing high-quality service and installations for more than 30 years. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. That's 336-5739.
It's hard to stop a train. Really hard.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
From 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239. Or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back. We're not going to talk about livers. I'm just kidding before we left, but we will.
We're going to talk about feet. Amputation of feet.
I think this argument between Franklin and John went on all during break, and so
well, Franklin,
that calmed down a little bit.
All right, and then John said, "All right, Franklin, you're right."
Let me start. No, let me start, John, before you do. Is what, and I want to ask Franklin this, is what Obama is talking about in his speech yesterday where he was shedding tears. What do you think he was trying to accomplish there?
I think he is trying to rally public opinion behind his views.
I agree wholeheartedly. Well, I think what he's doing is a bunch of nothing. He knows it's not going to go anywhere. He knows it's a challenge. All he's trying to do is take. Let me finish. He is trying to take the attention off what a screwed up mess he has created
in the Middle East.
And all the other issues that's going on. And Hillary's right there with him.
I think that
it's all it is. It's a smoke screen.
I think that the president's actions yesterday in the universe of executive actions are amongst the least far-reaching executive actions.
You are so out of line. You are so out of step with reality, Franklin. Let me ask you a question.
What I saw yesterday was a bunch of Republican congressmen come out.
Democrats, too.
A bunch of Republican congressmen come out and issue these broad, huge, sweeping denials before they had even read it.
Let me read you a statement. This is Senator Manchin, Democrat, West Virginia. This is a quote. Instead of taking unilateral executive action, the president should work with Congress and the American people, just as I've always done, to pass the proposals he announced today. Adding that legislation and consensus is the correct approach. Democrat Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota said that she has some serious concerns about the president overstepping his authority to implement some of these proposals. Those are Democrats, Franklin, not Republicans.
Okay.
And by the way, while we talk about how serious and trustworthy the president is, this is a tweet out from the White House on the White House's Twitter account. Quote, "A violent felon can buy the exact same weapon over the internet with no background check, no questions asked. At POTUS, hashtag Stop Gun Violence." You have a problem with that going out from the White House, Franklin? Because that's factually incorrect. That is, actually, federal law does not allow that. Bud's Gun Shop, which is the #1 online retailer of firearms in the world, noted that all of their guns, when purchased online, have to be sent under federal law to a legally licensed firearm dealer at the location of the purchaser, who would then conduct a full federal background check before that gun was to be transferred. That's federal law, Franklin.
That's because they're a firearms dealer, right?
No, Franklin. He said that a violent felon can buy the exact same weapon over the internet with no background check, no questions asked. That's not true. Federal law doesn't allow that. Now, if you're going to say that somebody violates the law every now and then, not Bud's Gun Shop, the number one retailer, no legal business violates that.
Okay.
Guess what?
So
That's a problem.
did this affect Bud's Gun Shop?
The point is, Franklin, the White House lied. They either lied or they don't understand federal law. Those are your two choices.
Or they're talking about a different type of online
which
sales.
is already illegal.
Okay.
It's illegal. So
the president tightened up the enforcement
then we go back to the fact that convictions under him are down significantly. Federal firearms convictions under his Justice Department are down.
And is that because the crime rate is down?
No, Franklin,
under that period
it's
of time?
not.
Is the crime rate down in Chicago?
Compared to when?
Last week.
The crime rate is down. The crime rate is down nationwide over.
Well, let me give
over
you
the last
Chicago's,
15
because
years.
I actually happen to have that for you. Okay.
Thank you, John.
As far as homicides involving guns for shootings, there were
You two are like George Allen and Gracie. You work really well
There
together.
were 2,272 people shot
Say
in
good night,
2013.
Gracie.
There were 2,614. There were 2,939 in 15. Chicago is the mass shooting capital of the nation. Matter of fact, one neighborhood in Chicago, West Garfield Park, had population 18,000, had 21 murders last year, which makes for a homicide rate of 116 per 100,000 people. The world's leaders in murders is Honduras with a homicide rate of 90. West Inglewood has 73.3 murder rate, which is higher than the second place Venezuela. By the way, that brings up another lie.
What does that have to do with the president?
Chicago has every one of the very proposals he put forth in place, has been in place for decades now, and they're the most violent.
Doesn't matter.
It shows you it doesn't work.
Not working.
Except that
Guess what,
Joliet
Franklin?
next door doesn't have it.
Guess what, Franklin?
In Indiana, next door
if you find
doesn't
a
have
doctor who says, I'm not going to amputate your foot, I'm actually going to treat your liver cancer, and what we're going to do is we're going to stick leeches on it, you probably want to say, I believe that technology has been proven to be unsuccessful. So his very proposals have all been in place in Chicago for decades, and it hasn't worked.
Oh, John.
I want to have some. I want to see if you know who quoted this. One man with courage makes a majority.
I remember the quote. I can't remember who said it.
Andrew Jackson.
By the way, Franklin, the universal background checks, if you keep closing all of these loopholes for law-abiding citizens, who gets hurt the most by that?
Don't know, John.
Well, criminals don't, because their guns are not purchased
Well, John,
legally.
here's what I know.
Well, now let me tell you something.
There's no
There is
shortage
something.
of
There is
guns in
people that get
America.
hurt. You know who gets hurt the most? Poor black Americans get hurt the most, because what this does is it increases the cost of buying a gun. So poor blacks who live in the worst neighborhoods, like the ones I mentioned in Chicago, who are in most need of having personal protection, they actually suffer the most from these proposals. Because you know what, Franklin, if it increases the cost $15, $20, I can still afford to buy a gun. But the person who needs it the most in Chicago neighborhood to defend themselves, they can't. So his policies hurt the poorest
So
of
what
Americans
you're
the
saying
most.
is they need more guns in neighborhoods
Absolutely.
in Chicago.
And guess what Americans are saying? December
Is there
was the
some
largest.
shortage of guns in neighborhoods in Chicago I don't know
I'm
about?
glad you brought that up, because the polling data on that is interesting too, because Gallup just did a poll for the most important problems. Guess where gun control ranked? 19th on the list.
What does that have to do with
The
anything,
president
John?
said the American public is demanding this. It's 19th on the list of problems the public thinks we should be
Prostate
addressing.
cancer may be 35th on the list. Does that mean we
So
should
in
never
other
be
words-
worried about it?
well, frankly,
what does that mean?
The president is saying he's doing this because the people demand it. He's saying he's doing it because of these incidents, even though he admits it wouldn't have stopped any of these incidents. In other words, it's a cynical ploy to get an ideological agenda pushed through that he wants. That's all.
You mean a cynical, idealistic agenda that was supported by flaming liberals like Ronald Reagan? Really?
Franklin?
Come on. That's the problem with this.
president-
You guys go farther and farther off into nutland and forget
Don't say
the
you
people
guys.
you
I'm
idolize used to support them.
I'm sitting over here with my mouth shut. Don't say
Franklin,
you
how many
guys.
times has the president, how many
I mean,
times?
geez. You
All
know,
right.
I mean, we have probably 3 times as many guns in America as we had 40 years
And
ago.
guess what? The public wants more because they don't think this president can protect them. That is one.
Why would you think that,
I actually
John?
meant to bring this
When
up.
the crime rate's
Steve,
down.
You
This
asked
is the
because
kind of
we're
myth
worried
that
about
you guys
terrorists
push
now. Because
for
the
this
terrorists have
nut-wing-
attacked us on our soil on his watch. That's
The
why, Franklin.
terrorists came here and
on
did
our
it.
soil on his watch.
What terrorists
And
came
by the
here?
way, Franklin, when you asked earlier, Steve, had he been a success at something? He has. He has been the greatest gun salesman in the history of our country.
I agree to that,
Smith
too.
& Wesson and Ruger stocks are up over 900% under his watch.
All right. The only reason
Because
he
of
even
all this goofy
No,
nonsense.
let me tell you. Let me
They're
ask you another
coming to
question,
get your
Franklin.
guns.
Do you know that he has proposed twice?
What bill did the president
All right, just
propose
listen to me. I'm
get
going to
take
give it to
anybody's
you.
gun?
I'm going to give it to you. He has on multiple occasions, and I can read them to you if you'd like. This is a direct quote from him. We know that other countries, in response to one mass shooting, have been able to craft laws that almost eliminate mass shootings. Friends of ours, allies of ours, Great Britain, Australia, countries like ours, so we know there are ways to prevent it. Now, do you know what's significant about that statement by the president? What policies did Australia and Great Britain implement?
Australia had a
forced confiscations
of 20%
forced
of the
confiscations
guns in
guns.
Australia.
Forced confiscations.
20% of the guns in
Did
Australia.
they confiscate guns by force?
No, they bought them.
Did you have a choice?
I don't know.
No, you didn't. It was a forced confiscation.
Do they still have guns in Australia?
They have some.
They have a lot.
But Franklin, you're missing the point. The president has bragged on countries that implemented forced.
Well, you could argue about whether there's a relationship or not, but the murder rate went down in Australia after that happened.
Actually, the murder. What happened? What's the worst mass murder with a gun in the world?
I don't know.
It's in Denmark, where they have no guns at all.
Okay, John.
73 people. And guess what happened? The guy went on an island with a youth camp. Nobody had a gun anywhere around, and it took hours.
Because
for
all of
anybody
those
to get
children
there.
should have been carrying guns.
Somebody
up
on there should have, and it wouldn't have killed 73 people, and it wouldn't have gone on for hours. But here's President's support. In the past, as a legislator, he has supported a ban on handguns. Now, that's a ban on handguns. He has voted to ban common ammunition. He has repeatedly.
This president proposed
Wait a
a
minute.
bill
Franklin,
as president
he has
of the
done
United
this. This
States.
is his history.
As
Let me
president of
finish.
the United States,
Let me finish,
has this president
Franklin.
introduced a bill?
Look, I'm just telling you what he's done.
The answer
Why
is
don't
no.
you want the people to know what he's done?
I don't
Well,
care
then let me
about
tell
what he
him.
did as
Then
a
let-
state representative in
He
Illinois.
has repeatedly voted against self-defense rights. He has suggested in the past that gun dealers stop selling semi-automatic firearms, which is essentially all firearms. He believes in common sense gun laws of Australia and England, which required mass confiscation and gun bans. And he has had no problem denying due process rights to an extremely inaccurate, bloated, unreliable terrorist watch list. That's his history. So you ask why the public is out buying record numbers of guns? Because they don't trust this man.
No, because of people like you who inflate
So once
these
again, folks,
ridiculous
there you
fears
get
that
it.
have
The
no
progressive
basis
in the room says
reality.
that if you're out buying guns,
No
you're
basis
stupid.
in reality.
Once again, you're stupid if you don't agree with Franklin.
All right,
I can
okay,
just do
okay,
simple
all right.
math. Gun ownership has gone up dramatically, and the only people who've benefited from this are gun manufacturers who have fleeced people.
Who has caused it?
You have.
Obama has.
Because the black helicopters are coming to take our guns.
It's a guy who brags on countries that confiscate guns.
He's so liberal.
If
let's
you've
talk
got a-
let's talk about something good that came out of his glass eyeball speech yesterday. $500 million more in federal funding to treat the mentally ill.
That's not bad. And that's within his rights to do as an
That's not
executive
bad.
order.
We're all for it. I'm telling you.
But
what
as
he was
long as it
talking
doesn't
about
pass a
yesterday,
bill.
what he was talking about
He
yesterday,
doesn't have. That's actually within his right to do.
what he
Franklin.
was talking about yesterday really was just to stir up something to get the attention off everything else he's got.
Even the
screwed
gun
up.
control people said that it was much to do about nothing.
So
on
why are you
firearms.
so wired up about it?
Require the
Because it
firearms
pisses me
laws.
off that he's
Wait a
while the
minute,
world's
wait a minute.
burning down.
Who's against this?
The world's not burning
The world's
down.
burning down, Franklin. You're crazy if you don't see it.
Who's against this? Require that firearms lost in transit between a manufacturer and a seller be reported to the federal authorities. Who's against that?
Nobody's against
Nobody's
Not currently
against that.
hadn't currently been involved in any
The
federal law.
FBI will be hiring more than 230 additional examiners. I'm against that. Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives have established a new center to investigate illegal gun trafficking.
Well, tell me, will that include the guns that they sent out in the Fast and Furious debacle?
$4 million in
Will they
additional
investigate that?
personnel to enhance this. Basically, he's going to create some more of those jobs. For
The
all
problem
these jobs
is
he's
the
created
problem
around
is the
country.
people. The problem is that casual seller, because that's actually creating law, and that will have people. Someone will be arrested on that. They will go to court, and it will end up in the court, and the court will strike that down because that is writing a new law.
All right, I want to change the subject because we talked about this the whole show just about. But I want to come back to one of my favorite topics. How you think Trump's doing? Both of you.
According to the polls, he's doing very well. Everywhere except Iowa. It's the only place I know of he's behind right now.
You think he'll lose Iowa?
I don't know the answer to that because Iowa is such a weird place in the sense that you have to have this organization on the ground that gets people to come to these polling stations and for these caucuses. And so I don't know the answer to that. I will say this: if he wins Iowa, the race is over.
Oh, that's
for
not
Hillary
true.
too, right?
That's not true. Rick Santorum won Iowa.
No, the reason I'm saying that is, unlike the Santorum case, or unlike
If he
the
wins
English
Iowa,
case,
it's over with for Hillary big time.
if he wins Iowa, he's already very far ahead in the next 3 primary states, which means he would have gone 4 in a row. And I don't know that there's
Why is Iowa such an
Actually,
important state?
I'm trying to remember.
Has there ever been a Republican nominee who has there ever been a case where somebody won the first 4 Republican primaries
actually, there have
and
been.
then lost the nomination?
There have been, but the other thing.
When was that?
But the other thing to keep in mind here, Franklin, is all of this has been reshuffled. The SEC primary. If y'all want to go on.
But he's ahead here.
If y'all want to go on if you want to go on the Tennessee Republican parties, and the only reason I tell you that is I can't remember whether it was the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but there's an article in there. Actually, the title of the article is "Why Tennessee May Be Significant."
Because it's
Ted Cruz has been working all of the SEC primary states very, very heavily. Tennessee's actually the second highest delegate count behind Texas in that SEC primary.
Sure.
So he could win New Hampshire, he could win several, and then he could lose all through the SEC primary.
Well, I mean, let's say he wins Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, and then wins half the SEC primary.
But guess what? Bernie Sanders is up again in New Hampshire on Hillary. It's a 49-44 now. He's ahead of her, and his fundraising has gone through the roof.
I don't dispute anything you just said, John, except that you may have isolated pockets where that happens, but overall, she's way ahead.
Let me ask you something.
I'm saying the same thing about Trump. Right?
Why is Iowa? Excuse me. Why is Iowa such an important state?
Just because it's first. That's it.
Now
no other reason.
And because of the way it's done,
the reason is that you have to have troops on the ground,
right?
Because it's spread out. It's
well, you don't go to a polling
that day.
station and flip a lever. You show up at a meeting.
It's a convention.
And a representative stands up for each candidate there and makes pitches to them, and they talk to each other, and there's interaction.
And they change.
And then they do something. It's literally like, okay, if you're for Donald Trump, go stand over here in this right corner. And then over there, and then they tally up who got what, and it's a really long. It's a commitment
game
to go there. You got to spend several hours to do it, as opposed to maybe spending a few minutes. So it's a lot harder to get people to go do that. That's the reason.
Do you think Bill Clinton is going to help or hurt Hillary in the election process?
I think he's going to help in some places and hurt in others.
I think, what's been interesting is New York Times, Washington Post have all written pieces about Trump's shot across the bow about Bill Clinton. And people who absolutely hate Trump, New York Times, Washington Post, have said Hillary's in really dangerous water there. And here's what really kills me about the reporting on this. They'll go, well, it's an affair, and it's his affair. Guess what?
And that was 20 years ago.
But guess what? Under federal law, she was as low as you could be as far as employment. He was as high as you could be. That's considered rape by an authority figure under most interpretations of that law. If you have sex with an Franklin, you can roll your eyes all you want.
Well,
people are charged with that.
That's not an honest statement.
People are charged with that all the time because
that's not
you
an
have
honest
the
statement.
authority to hire a fire. On top of the fact, there are 4 other women who say he physically assaulted them.
Why don't we
sexually, physically
back up
assaulted
for a minute.
them?
Let me back up for a minute.
Well,
I'm not going to say that Trump was out of bounds, okay? I'm not going to say that. Most of the time, I would say that attacks on a spouse are not appropriate. This is a former president of the United States. He's a public figure in his own right. I don't have a problem with
you're right, but I didn't get to another part of this. There are emails and all kinds of documentation where Hillary participated in slandering some of these women, in putting the women down, in actually hiring private eyes to discredit them. So the problem here for her is to say, oh, that's Bill's actions. It's not Bill's actions. Bill did what he did. She helped cover up what he did.
As I just said, I don't think it's off limits for them to take that approach.
Well,
now, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference in the race one way or the other.
A lot of people think she will not bring it up for that very reason.
I tell you, the way the Democrats run an election is kind of like one of these soap operas.
Well, by the way, just as a parting thing for people to consider,
Democrats' election's been a soap opera compared to the Republicans this time?
Yeah.
Germany.
I mean, just look at their debate. I mean, that's hysterical. Well, it's a hysterical, even way they debate.
Go, fellas. We are out of time.
Just for people to keep in mind, folks, Germany has been stunned by large groups of women who were surrounded and attacked by Middle Eastern Arab men in apparently an organized sexual assault. So when Obama wants to bring 10,000 refugees in, just think about that.
Hey, Frank, I've got one question before you leave. What would you like to talk about next week? And I will get an arrangement to get tickets to this Benghazi movie, and we'll all watch it, and then we'll talk about it on the show coming up. So after the Benghazi movie, if you got any Whoop supporters that want to go with us to watch this, we'll call in and
how about
tell
the
Daniel.
Iraqi army retaking a major city without any American troops on the ground last week?
Boy, good.
I'm glad they did.
Hey, Franklin, have a good day. See you later. John, thank you for coming in today. This is another week of Backfire. Good to be with you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.
You've been listening to